Good morning. My name is Clark Brewer, and I'm the chairman of the Cohasset Planning Board. And we're here this morning to have an event. It's a visioning session that the whole town's invited for, and it's essentially from 10 to 2 p.m. This is Saturday, March 5th. We're having a bus ride with MAPC, that's Metropolitan Area Planning Council team. They're planners that have come in from Boston and wherever they live, all over the place, to help us with our refresh of a master plan. Last master plan we put together in 2004, and it didn't get adopted by the planning board, but we're doing a refresh of that. We're having the MAPC take a look at that, take a look at the new realities that we have in 2016 compared to 2004, and we're hoping to get some good results so we can go on to phase 2, which is a redo of a master plan, which gives us options and gives us an idea of how we can proactively make changes to our zoning and other kind of municipal laws so that we are in control of what happens in the future, so that Cohasset stays the wonderful place that it is, and hopefully can be even better. There are a few challenges that we know about. Route 3A as two commercial districts, the North District and the South District. They don't have sidewalks, they don't have intermobility, and some of the infrastructure is aged. We've got a lot of curb cuts and a 3 times the state average dangerous intersection at the corner of Beechwood. So those are all things that we're hoping to address as a part of this master plan refresh, and there'll be more public meetings in addition to this one if not everybody can make it to the 5th of March meeting, and we hope to see you at those. And I think we're also having a survey. The survey is going to be coming out, and we'd appreciate your input. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Jack Cunningham here with
Ralph Wilmer.
All right, so Ralph, tell us a bit about the master plan.
So master plan is a plan that many communities have undertaken that looks at a wide range of issues facing the community, including natural resources, land use, economic development, housing, transportation, open spaces, and looks at all of those issues in a more comprehensive way and how they interact with one another.
All right, so who's most involved with the master plan?
Well, ultimately, it's the town's master plan, so the town is obviously one of the key participants in the process. Organizations like MAPC can help guide the process through the professional expertise of the planners that we have on staff, but we work directly with the community, the boards and commissions, key stakeholders, and obviously the department heads and people who work for the town, people who know the town intimately, and some of the issues that the town has addressed over the years.
All right, and if you're a resident of Cohasset who owns property, what's the most important part to know?
Well, I think the most important thing to know is that the town is undertaking a master plan, and that there are going to be many opportunities for anyone who's interested to participate in the planning process. Today is the first part of that process with the open house that'll happen later this morning, just to learn what the issues are, how the plan would take shape ultimately, and there'll be additional opportunities for the public to get involved once the master plan actually gets going.
All right, what are some of these issues you were discussing?
Well, with transportation, you want to look at the various modes of transportation. When we do these types of plans in other towns, that can be issues regarding traffic congestion. It can be issues regarding pedestrian access and safety. Are there good places for people to walk? How does the mass transit system fit in? And bicycle access and safety, things along those lines. When we talk about land use, We look at the various business centers that are in the community, like the downtown area, the town centers. We look at housing from all perspectives, such as providing affordable housing. Is there the right mix of housing in town? What are the trends demographically? How is a particular town going to be growing, and if so, at what rate, and what impacts that will have? In more of our recent master plans, we also look at issues like sustainability, climate change, energy, how public health interacts with land use and things along those lines.
Mm-hmm. All right, so when the master plan starts, are there what's going to be some of the immediate effects of it?
Well, the master plan process usually takes a year or more, so usually there's no immediate impacts from the master plan, other than it gets people thinking about how all of these issues affect how people live, work, and play in the community in which they live in. But once the plan is completed, it will include a roadmap, an implementation plan for how the town would implement the plan itself. So there'll be a large number of recommendations. Those recommendations will have to be implemented by a number of different players, whether it's the Planning Board or the Board of Selectmen or the Department of Public Works or any of those types of boards and agencies. And we'll sort of lay out what the priorities are, what the timing is for implementing them. But typically, for instance, one type of recommendation that comes out of a master planning process is that there'll be recommendations for a number of zoning changes, ways in which the zoning could better achieve the goals and the vision that's set forth in the master plan process. So one of the more immediate impacts of the plan would be that the town starts to think about things along those lines, how the plan would get implemented, and what types of improvements could be made as a result of the recommendations in the plan.
Okay, so once the plan starts, is there room for change if something doesn't work out?
A planning process should be a dynamic process, so there should be opportunities for the plan to grow and to change, to meet whatever the needs are. Sometimes there are unexpected things that happen that may not have been accounted for early on in the planning process. So it has to be flexible enough so that those changes could be accounted for as the process moves forward. And even after the plan is completed, a plan can be amended.
All right, well, thank you, Ralph.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Okay, I'm here with...
Karen Edelman. I'm a communications strategist at MAPC.
All right, so what's your role in the master plan?
I do communications, so I am responsible for making the materials look good and be understandable. I'm responsible for having people be able to understand what they're seeing when they come here and to know to come.
Yeah. All right. Don, what other questions?
That's what MAPC does.
What does PC do?
MAPC is Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and we are the regional planning agency for this entire region of Greater Boston.
Okay.
And we do many things, and one of them is provide consultation services for municipalities. We do master planning, and our master planning is what we call interdisciplinary. It involves public health, a huge degree of community engagement, because we really want to get everybody involved, civically involved. It involves transportation, housing, all of the things that are mandated by the state for a master plan. And we also do other things as well, like food systems planning. So we will offer a wide array of services that can be mixed and matched by the municipalities.
Okay, and for local residents of Cohasset, what should they be informed about?
They should be informed that their voices count, and that it's only with their participation that this community will be everything that it needs to be and that they want it to be.
All right, so what do you think of some of the steps they're taking to make this master plan come to fruition, I suppose?
Well, they're refreshing the old master plan, which is absolutely the first step. And they're taking the first step now, which is really drawing people in from the community, getting them excited. There's a wonderful turnout here today. And those are really the first steps, drawing people in and getting them pumped.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you
It's
very
been a
much.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now I'm here with.
Steve Gomer, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen.
All right, what do you think of the master plan?
I think it's absolutely necessary for the town to be able to gauge where it wants to go and put together a coherent plan for getting ourselves there.
Do you think that the steps the board are taking are effective?
Well, first of all, keep in mind that the master plan is the province of the planning board, and I believe that what the planning board has done is thought carefully through the construction of what they want to examine.
Yep.
And so, yes, I think it's the preparation for it has been tremendous, and they've also reached out to regional resources like the Metropolitan Area Planning Council to pull in those areas of expertise that we don't have on staff.
Yeah. Is there anything specific you're looking for from the master plan?
Yes, I'm looking for citizen input.
Yep.
That's
All right.
That's probably the most important piece.
Yeah. What would you say to some of the residents of Cohasset that they should know about the master plan?
Well, that it's not formulated. That in fact it's their input that will help to formulate it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Emily, you
Yes.
did the parking study.
Yes.
Do you have any comments about the parking lot use, the general like summary on the village parking lot?
Right. So I wasn't the one who did the study, but
Yeah.
I did do some counts one day,
That's
and
right.
we did realize that this parking lot over here, the one that we had passed, is very full. It can get very full, but then there is another parking lot that is fairly empty most
Right.
of the time. So it seemed like people were really trying to park as close as possible to their destination, but there was definitely more parking in the second lot for most of the time.
Yeah, wasn't there a problem? There was a problem I heard where there was some construction phasing and a bunch of screws had fallen out of somebody's pocket and everyone was getting flat tires there, so no one wanted to use the lot anymore.
Yeah, I think the maintenance of the lot could help. And we did notice that there were some people leaving their cars there all the time. So it makes it not look like an active parking lot.
Right.
Now, that extra parking lot has changed significantly since you did the report.
Oh,
because
excellent.
The entire building was renovated by the new owners.
Yes.
And they're bringing in new tenants, and the new tenants are bringing in more business, and more business is filling up that lot.
Oh, wonderful.
So it is, it's an asset to that building to have something so close. Now it's being utilized.
And also the James Lane project is going to be using that parking lot as their parking because they're only allowing one spot per unit there. So the rest is going to be parking there.
That's right.
So that will be filling up.
Oh, excellent. All right, good to know.
So this is an open forum, but we wanted to come down to the harbor. The harbor is a great amenity for the town, and I've only been on the mooring waiting list for 20 years, and I'm pretty sure 20 more I'll get a mooring in the harbor.
Give it to your grandchild.
Yeah, I don't think they're transferable, but as soon as if I have a grandchild, we'll get them on the mooring list right away. The harbor's a wonderful place. I mean, it's picturesque. The Cohasset Land Trust owns this spit of Situate. This is actually Situate.
Bassing Beach.
Bassing Beach is a part of Situate that intervenes into the middle of Cohasset Harbor. One thing we've talked about over the years, about the harbor, how to deal with parking issues in the summer. There's an interesting fact that there's, as the Cohasset residents all know, most of the harbor is owned by one person, and that may be changing. I think that leads some people to be concerned about change and how new ownership might affect the harbor long term, the way it looks, the way it functions, management. I think generally it's been managed pretty well, although what we have for the ability for zoning or planning for the future is there's not a lot of flexibility. There's not a lot that anybody can do with any of the properties that are there. Whatever you've got, and that's it. and I think one of the things that a master plan tries to address, and what a harbor plan might address, would be what is the best use, or what uses would be most beneficial to the people of Cohasset in the future. How do we see the harbor 5, 10, 25 years from now, and those are the basic issues for us. I don't know if you have any particular comments since we're in your neighborhood.
At one point, where we are would have been a corrugated metal building.
Yeah, the Haggerty.
Buildings went all the way across the marsh.
Yeah. They built boats
the
and
boathouse.
Cohasset
There was a
Colonials.
group formed. The town purchased this. I want to say around '92, maybe.
Yeah.
And when we went through the buildings, we didn't even know that boathouse was in there.
Yeah.
That was surrounded by other buildings. And we removed all the buildings, made the walkway, and it's been one of the better improvements on the harbor. It was zoned light industry at the time. We had it rezoned open space, and it just opened up the use. Parker Ave, we rarely used to see anybody come up the street.
Sure.
And now we have a steady procession of people who make the loop around Border through that. It was a really good project. Just to give you an idea of costs, we bought this property, and the property runs the other side of the creek all the way up to Border Street. Franny Haggerty, at one time, before the Wetlands Act, wanted to build a road in the back to service his property. And he bought that entire strip, and a guy who lived up on the corner thought, not in my backyard, and he bought up little pieces along the other side that were open to block it from having the opportunity to open. But we paid $600,000 for this, and I think it cost us about $100,000 plus to clear everything out. 700,000 won't get you far these days.
Yeah, that was a lot of money back in '92.
Oh God, yeah.
How did you fund that?
We through town meeting, we did it. We had a matching gift of I forget whether it was either $50,000 or $100,000, and Cohasset's most famous anonymous donor, who donated so much to so many places in this town. We were having a hard time raising the funds, and a check for the full amount showed up. And unfortunately,
Who was that anonymous donor?
the anonymous donor? Well, she bought top rack of the bells at St. Stephen's.
Right.
She
Which is a
paid
publishing
for the
business.
paid for the copper top on the lighthouse replication, because she thought they were going to do it in a patinaed color fiberglass, and she didn't like that. The only thing that bears her name doesn't even bear her name. It bears her family's name, the Bancroft Hall.
Yeah.
What was the date?
Also Bassing's Beach.
About 92.
92?
Yeah. This was the first place I ever set foot in Cohasset. I had no idea this town existed. And I brought a boat down for a friend, and we tied up at the end of the street. And we walked into town and walked back, and I called a realtor I knew, said, if you ever see a house on Parker Ave, give me a call. And 3 years later, she did, and we bought it that night. That was 30 years ago.
She also did the pool.
She did the pool?
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably be easier to say what she didn't contribute
Yeah.
to than what she did.
Yeah.
And
She and her sister did the pool.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mimi, should
Yes.
we head? Should we? I don't know if any other.
The only thing
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, and it's a question, but looking towards the future for the harbor, I think it's very important to also understand that it's a working harbor.
Sure.
It's a harbor that produces jobs for people in town, and it produces fish, and that's an important piece. You're not going to want to turn it into a
Some
country
kind of
club.
glitzy, fancy people thing. No, it has been. I think there's been a strong commitment to maintaining it as a working harbor.
Well,
Yes, it is.
if it weren't for that fishing fleet, come next year, the only boats that we got out of this harbor would
Right.
be something that draws about 6 inches.
And that's about it.
We made it to the A list strictly because of the fishing fleet. If we were primarily a pleasure harbor,
We'd be taking a rowboat through.
oh yeah, you could walk all the way across by the time they dredge it.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Lori is talking next year. She wanted to do it this fall, but because of the dredging project coming back, rebuilding the boat ramp. Currently, you can get in and out like 2 hours either side of low tide. It would turn it into an all tide ramp, and she's also looking into getting a long float that may be able to put more slips in and increase the income for the harbor. That I understand are going to be sold, not part of the or rented out, not part of the list.
Sure.
But that would be Lori's bailiwick.
Yeah, because she needs to do that to allow for more 12-footers that can.
I know. So, this is the highway business district on our zoning map is broken up into two parts, basically a south district and a north district. We're right at the end of the south district. The Situate line for you MEPC folks is right there. See the sign? Just left Cohasset. Instead of saying Situate, you can say we just left Cohasset. From a master planning perspective, I think this district is important, as well as the other end. I think there are things that we can do. We know that the intersection up at Beechwood is unsafe. We do have a 3A corridor study. This area has always been sort of kind of the Wild West. It's sort of cohesive up until past the maybe King, maybe 500 feet up the road. This section is sort of like doesn't kind of have its own identity for some reason. Especially on this side of the road, there's a kind of randomness to the commercial development. That is something that we could address with a master plan. The speed limit drops to 35 from 50 in this district, and but still there's lots of accidents. And the main reason, I think, is because the road's designed for 50 miles an hour. So everybody drives what the road is designed for. But what we really want to do for our town is put Route 3A in these two districts on a road diet, and consolidate curb cuts so that it's safer and more robust for business use.
Does the current zoning require that people like the mulch business over here and stuff keep a certain distance away from the highway so that as you're driving here, this looks horrible. The cars are right next to the pavement. They're probably partially on state property.
Yeah, that is a problem.
The landscaper and the shrub shop and everything else. It just, to
my
me, that's
understanding,
what
there are
hurts.
lawsuits with the state about people who have been using the right of way of the state right of way. We don't have a mechanism as a town to keep people off of the state highway. This state highway it's one of the funny things. We found 3A as a concern, and we went to District 5, and they said, well, we want to reduce the speed limit in the other end, and they're like, no, the speed limit's set at the speed that people drive, so you can't reduce the speed limit. And I continue to get pushback every time we ask. We get pushback. They say they're like ha ha no. So I'm at the point where we want to get Garrett Bradley and whoever takes Headland's place involved in those kinds of negotiations.
Right, but if you can't use private property to display goods and things for sale along 3A, what do you care about the state for? Because it's on their property that you can control through zoning enforcement.
Right.
And if they're parked somehow between their property and on the state property, then that's something you can't do anything about.
Yeah, they shouldn't be using the state right of way.
Right, but I'm talking about the 15-foot setback that's
Yeah.
required even for signs.
In terms of enforcement, I think Bob Egan, the zoning enforcement officer, has issued notices.
There's another thing that's in play here along some of these areas on 3A. It's the wetlands that are
Yeah.
behind these properties, and so they're getting pushed, a lot of these businesses, towards 3A because of setbacks to the wetlands in the back. For instance, Boundbrook behind the property across
Other
the street.
conservation.
Yeah, so there are some competing interests between even the jurisdictional authorities in the town that the business owners are always trying to fit.
Except for existing business owners, not new developments.
Both, yeah.
Because with new development, you say, I mean, that just limits how much land you have to develop at that point. And sorry, this is what you have to work with. But
A lot of that is actually vacant. So it's a lot of these businesses that have been around before the Wetlands
Right.
Protection Act
that's
existed.
yeah,
That's what's happening.
yep.
One thing I wanted to mention too, just before we go, when we're driving along 3A, one thing that I wanted to bring up today is the existing infrastructure that's underutilized as far as a lot of the excessive parking areas
Yeah.
that were zoned or permitted years ago, and we had high square footage per space counts.
Right.
That if there's a way, the two things I wanted to talk about today before I forget is that, and also the potential for some more intermodal connectivity with the town.
Yep.
In terms of maybe even a bus service. I know it's.
Sure.
But as we drive on this bus, it's amazing what you can bringing everybody together with that type of service, and maybe utilizing some of these underutilized parking areas as satellite parking and incentivize the business with connecting the whole town together.
That sounds great.
The other thing, just
Yeah, go ahead, Wayne.
is putting more housing. Right now, it's you have to have 2 acres of land on 3A in order to have any residential units in conjunction with the business.
Yeah.
And many of these lots are only a half acre or an acre.
Sure.
But to me, if you added some residential units, we would likely handle getting some lower valued, lower income units available. But more important, you'd be raising the tax without really adding more parking for the retail business and things like that. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
these capes and stuff. You could do an addition on it, put a 1,000-foot apartment on it. That helps the landowner and the business owner to be able to do it, but it has to allow that use in basically any amount of space that makes sense.
In a way, in terms of growth, we've said we want growth in the village in terms of residential. The other location where we probably want growth would be around the train station. But you're right. Rezoning based on lot size in this kind of commercial
It's
district.
just allowing that use in conjunction with this.
Makes sense. And to John's point, Shaw's and Stop and Shop parking lots are empty. Pretty much, or half full at maximum peak times. And maybe it makes sense to look at our parking count and see if there's a way to increase the retail in those areas. Shared parking is also a concept that works, where you have like residential uses and commercial uses that use the parking facility at different times. That's a part of how the village parking lot works to fuel development in the village. And then on the bus thing, that's a good idea. We did pursue a grant about 6 or 7 years ago to have a shuttle bus. There was grant money available. We call it the Co-Bus, and it was we didn't get support, or we didn't get support from the town leaders, if you will, and I couldn't get support from the major businesses in town. But I'll send you the schematic design.
Did you connect it to the bus in Hingham? Because to me, that's a key thing. There are employees
We
that
didn't. We
arrive
talked
there and
about
then
it,
have to
but
be picked up. And
Yeah,
Hull does that, by
There's
the
a
way.
missing intermodal link there between the Hingham bus service and Cohasset. People are trying to get from Quincy or Weymouth, and they can't make that last 1.5 mile link. So we approved on the planning board 30,000 square feet of retail happening right here a couple of years ago. There's been And you know, it seems like there's a lot of intermobility issues with this district. John brought up. We've got 220 units of housing that have just been built up on the hill, and there's no way for those people to walk on a sidewalk over to the grocery store, or even to cross the street to Dunkin' Donuts or whatever. And it seems like having pedestrian or even bicycle connection to these shopping districts, which are really adjacent to the largest new neighborhood in Cohasset, is, you know, it's something that needs to be worked on. And there are some preliminary plans that have been put in place for sidewalks along 3A and up Sawyer Street. Those haven't been implemented. Interestingly, there was a resident of Cohasset that was an exec at Stop and Shop that wanted to put $1 million into signaling at Sawyer Street. The state came back and said, "Oh no, we have complete streets now. It's going to cost you $2.7 million." So they took their $1 million and nothing happened. That's part of what we're going to talk about on the 18th of March. Is if there's a complete streets requirement, we like that, we get that, we want to do that for the 3A quarter study anyway. But we have an independent business that wants to put $1 million into infrastructure. How can we, instead of saying, no, this is one way we have to do it and you have to pay the full amount, how can we take partners, stakeholders, into finding a common solution? You know, I would say complete streets, maybe we only do the sidewalks on one side of 3A, and that would be enough. And maybe that brings the price down to $1.9 million. Or maybe the town kicks in something. Yeah, go ahead,
Does
Emily.
the town have a complete streets policy already?
We haven't adopted it yet.
Okay.
What is complete streets?
Well,
exactly?
yeah, it's basically it's where streets have sidewalks on both sides that bicycle and pedestrian travel is sort of allowed.
It's
you know,
giving the
there's-
streets like more usage.
Yeah.
But when you say we have complete streets and they wouldn't put the money in,
Yeah, we have the complete streets. The state has the complete street requirement.
Yep.
So when the offer came by the Stop and Shop people, the transportation planner came to put a signal at Sawyer Street, the state said, no, you can't just put a signal in. You got to do this complete street thing, and it tripled the budget.
Is it for the
So they
complete
failed.
street or just
What?
from here to there?
Yeah,
Is it for all of 3A, for instance?
That's ultimately the goal. Yeah, absolutely. As a part of the 3A quarter study is for 3A to be a complete street.
so they're saying we're not going to fund it unless you go all in. We're
Yeah,
not
they're
going to do
not
it in
gonna
an
approve it.
iterative way.
They're not going to approve it unless you're all in.
Right.
But instead of like trying to figure out how can we make this happen, is like half a complete street
Right.
okay for now?
It's all or nothing.
And then we have a plan for complete street down the road, but the whole thing just got stopped. Now we're trying to pick it up again. There's like $400,000 in Avalon, like sidewalk mitigation money, that
It should be used for sidewalks here, by the way.
we want.
Not somewhere else in town.
Well, yeah. You know, it should be used for
It
mitigation.
doesn't make sense. If you want people
for
from
Avalon.
Avalon to come to the shop, why
Yep.
put a sidewalk on Jerusalem Road?
Yeah, absolutely. Even though we need sidewalks on Jerusalem Road.
Correct.
We've talked about putting together a sidewalk bank where, subdivision developers come in to the planning board. They say, oh, well, we don't want to build any sidewalks. And in the past, the planning board has just said, okay. But, more recently we're saying we want to have a sidewalk bank. So if we said you don't have to build the sidewalks that are required, we make them build them on one side. Right, John? Don't we do it on one side. And then the remaining, we should take 60% of what the cost of is the sidewalk for the other side, put it in a sidewalk bank so we have funds to put sidewalks in places where we need it, little infill sidewalks.
What would it cost
Yeah.
to put a flyover, a walkover? That a lot
Yeah,
of money?
it's expensive.
Those are very expensive.
There was a bridge that was talked about down at Hingham Harbor. The thing looked terrible, and it had to have a handicap ramp, of course.
that's
So I
right,
mean,
yeah.
it was like it was this like big contraption that then blocked the views. and everybody
Fall
just
River Bridge.
everybody just sort of scoots across, and that's okay.
Oh, it is.
It's made my heart feel so good, and I was just saying to Clark, I've been watching the parking situation very much what you were talking about, and I'm going to get together with Ted Carroll and with Coral and with the Little League field and make sure that we're all comfortable and well parked this summer, you know, so that people can come and go at times when they need to come and go. And if we all know each other's schedules, we can help each other. And it's quite amazing when you think that this is children and adults, this is senior adults, and over there is back to children. So we've got quite a responsibility in some ways, but a very healthy responsibility. The children can come from Osgood School, library, sorry,
Yep.
and come through here to get to their swimming lessons, go over to see the baseball. Grandparents, older people can come out and sit, can come up and watch, and hopefully partake in a lot of things in coming years, you know, in the next few years.
But this is becoming a really strong kind of use area
Correct.
for residents of Cohasset.
A lot of residents, and a lot of things. We have a bocce court that's just been built. It's not quite complete over here. And if you don't think that won't become popular, it will. And it's nice to watch people of all ages be able to intermingle and also know, gee, there's a big swim meeting on Friday. We got to take a chance here and move some cars over there. They've got to go over there, or they have to go up here. There's no Little League game. And people doing that, sharing. And that's when I said to you, I remember John saying to John, I really just want to create a village. Yeah, that's it.
That's a great idea.
I'd like to thank everyone who contributed to this. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.